Good evening. The events at the Bell Hotel in Epping over the weekend became a very major national news story. And it's the usual stuff, of course. It's those vile, awful, horrid, far-right protesters. How dare they be upset that a 14-year-old girl was allegedly sexually assaulted by somebody who'd crossed the English Channel by boat and was staying in that hotel. And it led to local groups, predominantly females, predominantly mums, worried about kids protesting. And yes, it's true, of course, a few far-right thugs turned up. But I learned some things over the last 2 days that led me to put out a video this morning saying I thought it was absolutely astonishing that the police should have bussed a group called Stand Up to Racism, who had within them Antifa, who we know to be an openly violent organisation. What were they doing bussing them from the station to the Bell Hotel? Well, I got a phone call back from a police officer who was in charge of a situation that night to say I was wrong. They didn't bus them to the protest. They walked them to the protest and they bussed them back later. So if I was slightly out on accuracy, I apologise, but I think the gist of what I was saying was right. Did it make any sense to escort those people to a protest? Because as soon as they arrived, that's when the trouble and the violence started. So there is clearly a debate around, did the police actually in some ways cause the violence? Could they have said don't go, or would that have been countering people's rights? What I also asked the senior police officer was, why did you allow people to wear masks? Surely anybody that turns up for a protest wearing a mask is not, from either side of any argument, is not going with the best of intentions. The answer I got was they didn't have the right operational order to tell people not to wear masks. From what I can see of it, these counter-protesters, Antifa among them, some with masks on, were given the red carpet treatment to and from the Bell Hotel. And I'm pretty blooming angry about it. I really, really am. Anyway, big row between me and the Essex police, but it opens up a big debate about how do we police. And is it any wonder that the perception that we're living in a two-tier country where different groups are policed differently is spreading and growing in our country? Later on that day, GB News' Charlie Peters spoke to Essex Chief Constable Harrington about these allegations. This is what he had to say.
The law of this country as it stands, people have the freedom to assembly and to freedom.
So your officers did bring people towards that hotel?
Listen to my answer. That is there is a duty upon policing to allow people to exercise their rights of assembly and protest. They walked up to that protest in order to ensure that we understand the threat, manage and deal with the risks and the issues, as we did outside the hotel, as we did in the high street. We had officers there and they would have walked alongside to make sure that they understand, can intervene and prevent and detect crime.
Well, his body language would suggest that the Chief Constable is not looking especially comfortable. I'm going to get down the line now. Graham Wetton, former Met Chief Police Officer and a man that advises on public order enforcement. Graham, do you understand why I was upset about this? The idea that, I mean, why on earth were the poor darlings put in minibuses and taken half a mile back to the train station?
Even Nigel, just to correct you, I was never at the chief level, as Mr. Harrington is, but I did work on many public order events. But from my perspective on this, I think it's a sensible tactical option for police officers to escort groups. We do it on regular occasions with all protest groups. It's showing fairness to all groups. So football events, public order events, if there's any groups there, we can escort them to wherever they're going to. It's a sound tactical option to do it because you know where the group is. You've got, in inverted commas, control of them throughout their attendance at any event. To bust them away from it suggested that actually the situation became so out of control and disorderly, the safest way to get them away quickly was to put them in police vehicles. So you don't have to then use more resources to effectively bubble them, put a cordon around them and walk them back the way they came, because that would have taken a long time. And you end up being almost like a Pied Piper then. You've got like a walking disorderly group going on between both groups. So it's a sound tactical option. It's not the best option, and maybe having some distance between them would have been ideal. But public order policing is far from an ideal situation on many occasions.
Oh, I wasn't pretending it was easy for a moment, but please, Graham, answer this for me. I'm going to repeat what I said a few moments ago. It seems to me that groups like Antifa turn up, cause violence, and I've seen it firsthand. They turn up, cause violence. They've no compunction about the use of violence. And they wear big face masks so that nobody can identify who they are. It seems to me that if you turn up at a protest, and one in which tensions were clearly going to be very high, and you're wearing a mask, surely the police operating, whether they have an order to do it or not, should demand those masks are removed.
To remove a mask, there has to be what's called a Section 60 AA in place, which a senior officer in charge of the event has to put in place. Then you have to tell people then that's been effectively put in place at whatever time by whoever, and the reasons for it. If before you put those orders in place, I've worked on both right wing and left wing. So I've worked with Antifa events and also with the right wing groups, and all groups, or many groups, wear masks. Environmental protest groups, anarchist type groups, many protest groups use the masks. Before you put that 60 AA in place, you need to make sure you can actually impose it or enforce it. So you need to make sure you've got sufficient resources there that if people then refuse, and the order is that you have to then tell someone, you require them, the legislation is to require them to remove it. If they refuse to remove it, then you can arrest them, but you need to require them to remove it first of all. But you need sufficient resources to then start making arrests. If you've only got enough resources to manage both groups that you've got there, or even remove one group, then it's almost impossible to put the order in place and then enforce it. So it comes down again, once again, to numbers of police officers and resources on the street.
But surely, if you're an operational commander on the ground, in a situation that has perhaps moved in a direction you hadn't foreseen, surely you have the discretion to make decisions yourself without having orders to do so.
Yeah, the silver commander on the day, the tactical commander, would have the discretion to do that. And again, as Mr. Harrington mentioned,
they do. So they do have that discretion.
They can make those decisions, but again, part of that, the what ifs you go through is if I put this order in place, this requirement to remove masks, have I got enough officers to start making arrests when, and it's not if, when people start refusing to remove them? And if you haven't got the resources there to either make the arrests and then remove the people you've arrested, because that's another tactical issue, have you got the vehicles to start driving these arrested persons away? Because you can't stand there holding someone you've arrested because, lo and behold, the group that they are with will want to come and release them. So it becomes like a multitude of operational problems. Right. If you haven't got the resources in the vehicles, then don't put it in the first place. There's no point putting it in if you can't enforce it. And that goes throughout policing. We don't make arrests on occasions if we can't then actually remove them at the time. We wait until a better time.
Graham, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living. And maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind. The more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver, and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
I'm joined in the studio by Kwasi Kwarteng, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and Baroness Diane Hayter, Labour peer and former Labour Deputy Leader of the House of Lords. There are many that think we could be in for a summer of protests. Certainly the anger out there is very, very real. It was interesting to see, even Number 10 putting out briefings saying Britain is fraying at the edges. we need to repair the social fabric. Angela Rayner saying immigration was having a profound impact on society. Well, I think I could argue, actually, the actions of this government are making all of that worse. So tensions are high. But do you see what the point that I'm making about the way this was policed? I don't believe it to be right.
No, and you will take no advice from me, but if you were to, I would say don't fall out with the police, because whatever's going to happen over the summer, we need to support them, and they need to help in what's going to be difficult. There are, you just referred to one group as I think, little darlings or something, and I think for the police to start taking sides on any of these issues will be difficult.
But it looks like they did to me.
Well, we don't know, but don't go to war with the police would be my advice. We will need them over the summer.
But like all of us, the police can get things right and wrong.
They can, but we should help them get it right. I mean, the other point being made, is why I completely agree, is about the use of masks. I mean, I find this, I often have to do it. I'm what's called a gender, I hate the term, but I've called a gender-critical female. So I have to go through all of this, and I've had, large people, I think they're men, but with wearing masks. It is very, very intimidating, and it happens on both sides. We have seen people anti-migrant wearing masks, it happens both ways. So we must support the police in their difficult decisions.
I totally agree with that. Look, on this policing, I don't know enough of the detail, but I don't quite agree with you, because presumably these Antifa, whatever they call themselves, they would have gone there anyway. So if they're going to go there anyway, the police might argue, well, we want that to be controlled. We want to be able to see what they're doing. We will accompany them to the protest. And it's quite reasonable for the police to say, we will escort them back to the railway station or wherever it is they came from. Because what you don't want is a completely unregulated mob, essentially.
But the police would have known, excuse me, that if you took that group of people down to that hotel, allowed them into close proximity with the mums, etc., that were saying how concerned they are, the police would have known that would lead to violence. Isn't their job to stop that?
So you could do one of two things if you're a police. You can either say they can't come, which would have created its own violence with them and with the police and the demonstrators, the counter demonstrators, or you could just say, actually, we're not going to do anything, and there would have been a whole sort of argy-bargy there anyway. Yeah. So it could be argued, and I am arguing it, that what the police did was the most reasonable course of action, because there would have been, very likely disturbances anyway, and they tried to control the advent of these other. And
on the mask, it was interesting. I mean, Graham, we've had Graham on the show before because he's an expert in these things and very objective in the way that he argues it. As Graham said, despite not having an order, an officer in charge could make a decision if they've got the resources.
Look, and I think the point you made about...
I saw at least a dozen police vans there. They had the resources.
So you're not turning up to these things wearing a mask with the best of intentions.
Exactly.
I mean, why? If it's a peaceful demonstration, why wear a mask?
Exactly.
So I completely agree with you on that. But I don't know what the situation is in terms of Essex Police, what the order was given. They've obviously got a policy to deal with these things. And that probably needs to be looked at.
Well, we saw last night large numbers of people who've come here across the Channel being moved into a hotel in Canary Wharf. I think the rooms are up to £400 a night. Quite why Canary Wharf in the middle of the business district is quite beyond me. Can you see, Diane, why everybody, including the government now, are really worried about public disorder?
Of course we're worried, and in a sense, for the government, whatever you do seems to be wrong. I don't know about the Canary Wharf. I hear it's been denied, but just say it was.
It's true.
Okay, well, whatever. But actually, if you complain that they are being put where there are families and the families don't want them, then Canary Wharf, which is empty at the weekend, there are far fewer families around there, might actually be a very sensible decision. I don't know the detail of it.
There's an argument
but,
there.
if you don't want them having the houses that there are waiting lists people want to go in, you don't want to put them in a hotel in Dis because it's too close to their school. Yeah. So there you choose a hotel that's safe. I do think we have to try and help the authorities take a decision that's best for the public.
What the public are saying, overwhelmingly, is they don't want these people in this country at all, and they blame gutless governments.
Sure.
That's how this... quasi, the anger's real, isn't it?
No, of course it is. And, the Conservatives didn't cover themselves in glory, frankly, on this. I think the current government is struggling. And I'm increasingly of the view that, the ECHR is relevant to all of this. Because you can do whatever you want as a government, but if your judges and other people are saying, no, you can't do this, all of these people have the right to stay, the government itself is powerless.
But it's not saying that. The bigger problem is we're still not dealing with the applications quick enough. Because,
but how does that help?
Well, if we can get them through the system, assuming they're going to be denied asylum, I mean,
Most aren't now.
But whatever.
Because if we deny them asylum, what do we do with them?
Well, then we put them back to where they came.
But we don't.
Where it's fallen.
Well, we can do that, but the
problem.
bigger number are those who have still not been dealt with. Some of them 10 months, 2 years after they've been here.
So what I would suggest, even if you dealt through all the backlog, there would still be the challenge of the courts. The boats would still be coming. I don't see how you would resolve the situation.
Well, there's two different things. There's the people who are here, and the ones who get asylum will at least then be able to disperse and to if they get asylum, and to be able to work.
Well, what will happen is, according to the Prime Minister yesterday, we'll chuck them all in social housing.
Well, I don't know we'll do that, but they will then be able to work. And those who do not get asylum do not belong in this country.
Yeah, but then getting them out, that's the problem. And we all have the same...
No, Dan, we agree with you. The point Kwasi is making is, and it's a strong point, that when, for example, David Blunkett was Home Secretary, what you've just said applied. You shouldn't be here, you've gotten rid of. It was very, very simple. That just doesn't happen anymore. And we remove visa overstayers. People like that we do remove, and it's not that difficult to remove. But the vast majority of these people can go to the courts, claim Article 8 of the ECHR under the Human Rights Act. It's a real problem.
I mean, there was a man, there are lots of anecdotes, but there was a gentleman who, was a violent criminal. We couldn't deport him because he was a role model to his daughter. Now, that should not be
and it is
a consideration.
No, this is complete nonsense, and I'm not going to defend any of that. Whatsoever. And
then we have that case where 31%.
Because my view on that is, if he's a role model to the daughter goes with him. And therefore that right to family life, yes, but that means the whole family leaves.
That right to family life opens up a whole multitude of
everyone can claim a relation.
Anyone
somewhere.
can claim a relation.
Which is why they can go together.
It's a massive problem.